afternoon, good night, wherever you are. For me, from sunny California, from Anissa, we welcome you again this Friday. First thing first, big happy birthday week for the maestro, 101st birthday. A lot of you send in a lot of messages, shared photographs and stuff. For that, I have to thank you very, very much. And also thank you for joining Yogesh Bhai's live Instagram webcast. It was fun to do that as well. So yeah, so I just started off today with a couple of Abaji's Qaidas. Yeah, the first one was the Ghina Tete Dagena Dati Dagena Tinagena, and at one time I was just listening to some recording way back when he was here in San Francisco, and he was sitting around and he sort of touched on another aspect of it. It was instead of Ghina Tete Dagena, he went Ghina Gadete Dagena. So Ghina Gadete Dagete Dagena Tinagena Kena Katete Takadete Dagena Tinagena. So I thought that was interesting because it requires the Baya to get involved a little bit more, because it's an interesting combination of Ghena Gadete Dagena, and in variations it requires a little more concentrated focus on the Baya. So that was that. And then of course the famous Dada Gadete Dagena. Interesting thing for me is that a lot of the time we do vistars, variations, paltas of the Qaidas, and what we do is we do the vistar for the first part of the cycle, and then we repeat the theme as the second part of the cycle, and so that's lengthening. And so and then later on we climb into the second part of the cycle as well and start creating little improv areas in that as well. So that's what I was doing with with the theme appearing later and variations appearing in the front part of it. I usually don't do that. I usually try to keep the variations once they begin, then that's what it is. I don't return to the theme. I just keep going forward. But today I just decided to do that, giving myself a little more time to get prepared for the next variation. So it's a good, ploy to be able to keep repeating the theme after every little variation you make, so that it gives you time to think about what the next variation is going to be. So that's one thought. The other thought, the last time when I was talking about the Baya work, we talked about Gudai Maharaji, Pandishanta Prasadji's Baya, we talked Kishan Maharaji's Baya. Then I mentioned that I like to follow both the routines and try to combine them in the way I play. That came to me from watching my father, because he automatically had this big maidan for him, and he dug in and played in that manner. He didn't do slides, so that's the one addition that I have made. So when I'm playing Dada Kadete, so in the fast it becomes, so it's interesting. So it just lends a little bit more punch to the dete. So that happens, but I also do. That's an addition for me on my side. So that's what I meant when I said that I follow my father's approach to the Baya and then add a little bit of that element to it. The little slide or some stuff like that, tricky for me. So anyway, that said and done, I'd like to now invite, Kathak dance diva, my dear wife, my most better half, over here to join me to talk about dance and its relationship with Tabla. Hello, Antonia Ji. Whoa, that's a good one. So everybody say hello to Antonia Ji. Antonia Ji, say hello to everyone.
We have your phone.
And we are adjusting the frame a little bit so that we can both be in it. One thing about Instagram is that it requires you to be, in this little pocket frame, and so if there are two of you, then it gets a little bit tight. So anyway, that happens, but it's fortunate for us, we are used to closeness, so that's great. While we are at it, while this is being set up and organized a little bit, I wanted to shout out or request to those of you who are watching and are a little bit more enterprising, and you guys take the whole piece of music and you post it in your website where you have subscribers and stuff.
YouTube channel.
And your YouTube channels. I would request you to first get the permission of the artist whose video you're posting in your YouTube channel. Not just presume that you have the right to do that, because this is their hard-earned material that they worked most of their lives to organize and then present it to you in the best way possible. And you just kind of grab it and take it away and throw it onto your YouTube channel, and they don't get a chance to be able to create their own YouTube channel or monetize it in some way, while you in some ways, in a minuscule way, do flourish monetarily in this, and that I think is a little sad. So my request to you all out there is not just me, but all the musicians who are performing. I'm sure if you ask a musician, may I post? I don't think they will say no. But it is just good practice and good protocol to be able to give the musicians their due and the respect they deserve by just asking them. And that's all it is. Just ask, and then it's done. So I'm asking Antonia Ji to join me, and we will talk about what are we going to talk about? You got to turn this way.
Okay.
Ah, thank you very, very much.
Is
I
that better?
think the red looks beautiful with the black. Kya baat hai?
I know.
Kya baat hai? So,
May I thank our daughter Anissa
I
would like to. I know you've already. For she spearheaded this entire thing.
Yeah.
She's organized it every week. It's better. She's gotten different equipment, and I just need to express my appreciation.
Absolutely. I will join in the appreciation gang myself, so that's good. So, question.
Yes.
You study, what's interesting for me is that you studied with Sitaraji, and Sitaraji was also getting some training from my father. So there is this triangular setup that works. So compositionally speaking, what does a Kathak dancer look for when it comes to accompaniment from a tabla player?
No, a lot.
Oh well,
A lot.
in a nutshell, give it to me in what, 18 words?
I think presence more than anything else. I think when you say you've got to be a good listener, it's compounded. You've got to be a good listener. You have to listen to the compositions, the song, the nuance you have to understand in the poetry, and you have to be a good watcher, someone who's watching the dancer. In that moment. I think that the best Kathak we've seen, the great dancers of our time, they're spontaneous. They're in the moment. They're not. There's great choreography, great memorized choreography. We know that. But I think with Kathak, you want to see that spontaneity. You want to see the improvisation. You want to hear it. You want to see it in the abhinaya as well.
Yeah.
You want to see in the bhav. When someone's telling a story, there's something that Rumi once wrote in his poetry. When you see a storyteller, know that a house is being destroyed. Every time you're getting something new. Every time the house is, maybe your notions are being destroyed. So anyway, that's a very mystical thought. But with Kathak we know, I think that what really one of the things that bonded me with Abaji was knowing that as a boy, he was intrigued by the theater companies, the dance theater companies that were coming to the village, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was particularly interested in the tabla player, of course, we know that. But he acted.
Yeah, he did.
One day he showed me,
Did you guys know that my father acted your grandfather acted? Not only on stage, he was also the second leading man in a movie, which I'm, struggling to find. And so someday we will find that.
He had a scar, and he said, "You see this? I was supposed to be stabbed, and the other actor missed the pouch of blood, and he stabbed me instead." So he had this, and of course, a composer we know, but such a consummate singer, such a consummate musician. He could come home after performing, let's say with Raviji, big concert, big dinner afterwards. Okay, let's just stay a few people. He would sing till 5 a.m.
Yeah, he would.
He would just be so, he was like a man possessed.
Yes.
Zakir just mentioned you heard something of one of his sessions here when.
Yeah.
And I always feel very bad that when he was here with us, students, or wherever, we would meet him, any of his students all over the world, we all know how he never, even my Guruji Satara Devi, she would say, like every Guru, he's a fountain. He was a fountain. And he would just continue and continue and continue. And one day he was sitting at our house, where we used to live, not far from here.
Yeah.
And he was reciting so much, and he just looked down, and then he just looked up, and he said, "Please, how much can one man take?" Because it was just almost like he was, it's like someone possessed, and I think that doesn't stop.
No, that doesn't stop.
That was going on and on and on until his last days.
Okay.
And same thing with my Guruji.
Yeah. So I just want to add my 2 bits to what Tony G just said about expecting something from a tabla player. Now, I'll give you examples of pockets of tabla players. In the 60s, 1960s, 1970s, even and up till mid-80s or something, there were pockets of tabla players. There were tabla players who were well known as accompanists for dance. Then there were tabla players who were well known as accompanists for vocal, and others who were well known accompanists for instrumentalists, and others who were soloists. There were very few tabla players, you could count them on your fingers, who could excel in any one of those areas of music. And that was considered something very unique. There were only few, like my father, Pandit Kishan Maharaj, Pandit Shanta Prasad ji, Ustad Karamatullah Khan Sahab, Ustad Afaq Hussain Khan Sahab, where was I going to go? Pandit Anokhe Lal ji, Pandit Sharda Sahai ji. These were people who were very Ustad Nizamuddin Khan Sahab, who excelled in all of these areas. And so the reason for that was most of the tabla player who were vocalists, who were playing for vocal, day in, day out, they were just hanging out with them. They were listening to them in their houses and at their practice sessions, and were always around with them. So they were able to judge frequently as to what is needed from them, because they had heard it so many times and they had been through that process so many times. Similarly, dance, myself included, I hung out with dancers in a way that I went to dance classes, I accompanied, I practiced, I played teka, all that. And what happened with that is that I was watching them compose their items, do tumris or, gat paltas and so on, and was accompanying them. So kind of getting an idea of what kind of rhythmic involvement is needed from a tabla player. And so I grew up doing that, and therefore there were a lot of tabla players who specifically were that. And then of course for instruments, same thing happened. And but these days it has all changed. And this is where is an advantage for you listeners as tabla players, because you have videos to watch. You can not, I mean, there's no need only to listen to the audio of, say, Birju Maharaj's performance, or Durga Lalji's performance, or Sitara Ji's, or anybody's performance, but it is more important that you watch a video of those performances, and then you see how the relationship between the tabla player and the dancer develops, the kind of patterns, phrases are being used by the tabla player to amplify the movement, and that's very important. And that brings me to this other point of syllables, language. I mean, the Kathak has different, like tat tat thai, tig da dig dig thai. Now we have digger, we have tat, we don't have thai, we have da.
Yeah, how do you play thai?
So you have to adjust. You have to find the closest possible sound that you can come up with to be able to do that. Now, there's a little bit of a hurdle there. You can get the closest possible sound and make it just right, but at a certain speed, you might not be able to execute in combo those closest possible sounds. So when that happens, you have to just, play the length of the phrase and the actual sonic pattern that happens. So if you have tig da dig dig hey, tig da dig dig hey, you have kat dha te kite da, or kite ta kate kite din. Thai could be thin. Now thai could have emerged from the syllable thin. Now you have thun, for instance, in Kathak. Kite thun thun. So I mean, we all know that Kathak was very dominant in Lucknow at a certain time in the 1800s, and the Lucknow Gharana Tabla was based there. So a lot of give and take happened with Tabla and Kathak in that area. We also know that the Tabla players from Banaras studied in Lucknow and took that style to Banaras and created their own idea of how to execute all that material. And so therefore the dance schools also traveled, and we know that a lot of Banaras tabla players were well known as accompanists for dance, and that also is because between Lucknow and Banaras there were a lot of dancers who emerged and gradually moved to other parts of India, like Lakshmi Maharaji, Shambhu Maharaji, Achan Maharaji. They moved to Delhi and Mumbai and so on. So that happened. But stuff like thun thun, I mean, what do you do with? So if you have kitata thun thun na te ta, right? So you can play it. You can do that. But what happens when you're playing fast? It's a little hesitant, it's a little tight. So in that situation, you find the closest, smoothest way of doing it. What I do normally is instead of, I do, instead of, so, and I can play it fast and relaxed. It's very important that you are able to play relaxed so that you can concentrate on being in time. If you're concentrating very hard on just executing the phrase, you may lose the time, one, and secondly, you may lose the connection to the next phrase coming up. So relaxing is an important thing. So if that's fine. Now that sounds more closer. What do you do there? That's a little hesitant. So you switch. So that, instead of that, you can do that. Or So you can do that and find syllables that relate to tabla, like tat tat ta drig jan jan. Now where do you get the jan jan? You have to realize that it may have emerged at some point from a pakhavaj dhin dhin dhete dhagete kridate kridhin dhin. So dhan jan. And what the Kathakar did that was that he took those syllables and related it to a sound or an instrument that he could execute, like chan chan, something like that. And so that's where the sounds might have emerged eventually, but in its core, in its inception, tabla and pakhawaj were the instruments from where the sounds to Kathak were adopted and then modified, or how do you call that? Somehow created in a hybrid form. Do you agree?
But yes, but between Pakhawaj and Tabla, you mean? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you have a lot of compositions that you think they have the power of, to have a certain. They sound like they're starting with like so it sounds like a tabla.
Yeah, I mean, one of the compositions that Biju Maharaj does is a Lucknow tabla composition, like Now I've heard this composition played by Khalifa Wajid Hussain Khan Sahab and Ustad Afaq Hussain Khan Sahab in Lucknow. So it obviously had roots there, and I don't know if they got it from Bindadin Maharaj Ji or so on, or the tabla bowls were taken and changed and modified. So these are things that will help you to realize that it is not necessary that you have to execute exactly. For instance, I could be so I could be thinking that. So if I don't even play, I could just be going. I could do any of that as long as I get the highlights of the phrase where a particular syllable jumps at, like the rest, that's okay. So I can fill it in with whatever I can imagine at that point, as long as I get the salient points of a composition. And that is very important for a dancer, to know that you as a tabla player are with the dancer and you're not going in two different directions. So that's important. When you watch the videos, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, you will see the bhav element, the expression, and how the accompaniment is. Like for instance, if the gat is being danced, now you've seen that, and you've seen that a tabla player and a pakhawaj player have executed that rhythmically for the dancer. So now you know that that's what is expected of you. So when you see that palta, you do that. When you see a dancer look at a certain angle, you know how to amplify that. If you just watch the videos, it's very important. So we come back to one of the things I said in one of the beginning classes: you must listen, you must watch. And that's the advantage I had, because my father took me to all the concerts since I was like, maybe that high, and
sent you to Guruji's house to accompany the dance class.
Yeah, accompany the dance class and so on. Speaking of Abbaji, he also composed for dance, correct?
Absolutely, I'm sure he did. I mean, he did so many films. I'm sure there was dance, and also he wasn't. He didn't teach me too many compositions per se that were, let's say, dance compositions. But he did, of course.
Do you have one?
I think Talking High just reminded me of this a couple of years ago.
So that's, obviously original was that was, I know them because I played, in classes, and then and for many years played with all the dancers in India, and myself, and I think Latif Ahmed Khan Sahab were two tabla players who were regularly called upon to accompany dance. So yeah, so that's there, and then so now there is one thun, one tune can be executed, but is a little tough, and there are many variations of these compositions. I think Abbaji also taught you something to do with Bhataka Tunga stuff.
Abbaji had a composition that was very kind of, was in Tisa Jati, and he did it in, he liked to teach in Vilambit, and the reason, all you tabla players and musicians know the reason for that, dancers, because if you learn in Vilambit, then you can dance in the different tempi live. So this was in Tisrajati. So it how I can do it no, play the way he taught it. So he said, Katakatunga beta, right? I do Katakatunga. Katakatunga, Kadagadiga, Kadadinda, Takida, Takatunga, Takitaka, Tatakadadigan, Tate, Tatate, Katate, Tatate, Kate, Tate, 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 Tatate, Kate, Tate,
nice.
So very beautiful, absolutely,
so.
and beautiful to dance. And I've had, great accompaniment from you on this score, and others, of course. Abbaji was about, I just wanted to say one thing about studying with Abbaji. When I went to study with him the first time, and I was, kind of a neophyte Kathak student, he just, the first thing he said to me was, Beta, what is the jati? And he had this way of teaching where, luckily I guess, Misha, I don't know how it happened, he had this way of teaching where he would recite something and, bring it to somebody and say, okay, what's the palla? A tihai. What's the palla? Or he'd recite a palla and he'd say, bring it to some. Yeah. So he was the kind of guru that all the great gurus, certainly my gurus used to Tara Devi, bring you to a place where you can go on.
You can discover for yourself.
And I think that's one thing that you keep saying. There's a lot of carbon copies. Nobody, you didn't want to, you realized you couldn't just be your father. Guruji used to say, okay, yeah, fine, go ahead, copy me, keep copying me. But she wanted, I think the gurus want you to go on to express yourself, to discover more. And that's why they kind of keep taking you, like a child. You keep taking the child and leaving the child there, discover a little more. Not in danger, but in safety. Yeah. So,
they're always there to correct the navigational route for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And Abbaji also would say to me, and my teacher, of course, is a great katakar. Absolutely amazing. I wanted to ask you something about that, though. One sec. But Abbaji once said to me, there's no dance without bhal. And, it was interesting because he was this great laikard, and he thought he would be, wanting to know about, I don't know, great footworks or tihays or dancing in different tals and all that, and he made it very clear. When you accompany shlok, kavit, we've listened to you, like you kind of channel, talk about Kishore Maharajji's doing Ganana, when you do that, let's say Katta duganana tuntada, chamakata chapati dami si damakata karaga kappara chamakata. How do you play all those words?
That's what I was saying earlier. You play the closest, and if you're not able to remember some of the words, you fill it in rhythmically. You rhythmically fill it. As long as you're rhythmically filling it in, the tempo is there, the lay is there, and then you catch, whatever phrases that you do recall that on the 9th beat of the second cycle there was this one little durge. So you do that,
So would you play durge?
You just play. Yeah. I mean, you would play closest possible thing. And so that's what you do. You let the dancer know that you're with the dancer, and so they can feel comfortable in just being able to dance, as opposed to worrying about is my accompanist following me or not, or is the tempo correct or not, or anything.
Now, do you kind of feel as a tabla player when you're accompanying a dance concert and you've got the musicians and the singer and everyone's there, do you kind of feel like the catcher in the infield, that you've got to control this whole thing? Do you think that don't you agree with me that the best singers also are following the dancer, and that you don't need to?
Well, that's the thing. I wouldn't say best singers, but I would say the singers who grew up doing that. Okay, I mean there are lera players.
Best singers for dance, I mean.
Yeah, there are lera players and singers who have spent 70% of their time in the dance classes, or with some dance teacher or something, or some dance maestro accompanying, or them, and so they have developed this inner kind of beacon that ties them into what the dancer is doing. And when I have seen this, there used to be a harmonium player named Hari Shankar and a sitar player, I'm forgetting his name, who were playing with Maharajji, Birju Maharajji. Birju Maharajji didn't even have to prompt them. I mean, he would just look at them and they will know, okay, I'm supposed to go to that line.
Guruji too,
so that happened. So, but lately, in the last 20 years or so, because of travel and baggage restrictions and stuff, a lot of the dancers don't bring their particular core of musicians with them as much as they used to, and they pick and choose from wherever they have arrived, who can play harmonium, lera, and so on. So now you find them trying to, conduct as they are performing. And so people like me and there are other tabla players also end up trying to keep the band together in line with what is required with the dance. So this happens these days a lot, but in the old days, no. I mean, everybody traveled by train. So and Kathak dancers had like 5-6 musicians traveling with them, and they would perform, and everybody knew what was going to happen. And of course, apart from the upaj and ladant between tabla and the dancer and so on, all the fixed compositions and the thumris and gatpaus, they had an idea if like Birju Maharajji or Sitaraji were going to do peacock, they knew they had to go to Megh or Malhar. And immediately they knew that that's where they were supposed to head. Whatever lera they were playing, they just segue into just to create that atmosphere. So that's the thing. That's very important. And that comes from watching. That comes from hanging out with the said kind of style of music. And so by all means do that. I have to, on your behalf and myself, thank Tony G for being here.
I'm sorry, we just scratched the surface, but
of course we scratched the surface.
I would like to give a big shout out to all of my fellow dancers. We just had International Dance Day.
Oh yeah.
Which actually was started on April 29th many years ago, actually,
Mhm.
maybe like about 40 years ago, I think.
Mhm.
For someone whose birthday is also April 29th, Azabaji,
Mhm.
is a French dancer, choreographer. Gee, now his name now escapes me. Jean-Georges.
Yeah.
And his cohort, I can't remember. Oh, she was Marie Saleh, a lot of women dancers, of course.
Oh, and I also want to give a
Get
shout
short
out.
shrift.
Shout out.
Can I just finish?
Yeah.
One of the things, what he did, he took the dance, ballet, he was at Paris Opera, out of it being this spectacle, costumed, not quite, they wore masks. He went back to some old Latin texts of pantomime, which really moved him, and he said, take off the masks, there we'll find passion. And his work led to the great narrative ballets in the West. So I think that when we have such a great art form as Kathak, and I think that we should do as much as we can. It's an incredible dance, theater, art, music, art form. And I think that Zakir grew up with it. And I'm fortunate to have been, with him for so many years and to watch his process. And I think that playing with all of the dancers that he has since his childhood has done him in very good stead.
Thank you very much for the plug.
Shall I just move over? Can I just move over?
All right, so I just want to finish with a little, a few compositions, and some old stuff that I first learned from my father. I think he was in the mood of small compositions at that point, and I got some of those, and we all got them, and there were variations of one basic theme, right? So So, be safe, be watchful, social distancing, take care of yourselves, masks, whatever you can do to be able to stay healthy, do that. I don't know.
May 3rd, I for India.
I can't tell. Say.
Oh, I for India. May 3rd.
I for India.
Oh, and I shared with you a little Instagram thing about this event called I for India, which is taking place. There's a lot of us musicians from India who have contributed a little piece, a performance that is going to be done on Facebook, I think on
May 3rd.
May 3rd, and please come on, join and watch, and if you can contribute. This is to support the migrants and you know, the poor people who are suffering a lot in India with hardly any money or any kind of support to be able to survive, and so this long many hours of event is going to take place, and we are going to request all of you to be able to contribute and help as you know, these unfortunate people to get through this very terrible plight that they are going through. So May 3rd on Facebook, I for India. Please join us.